Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Diaz, president and founder of Larry Jacob Internet Marketing, and another episode of How Do You Define Infusionsoft Success? This week, I have the privilege of interviewing Micah Mitchell. And I say privilege because him and I go way back. I have to be honest, I am the Infusionsoft person I am today, due in part with everything I learned from this guy about 4 years ago. In Icon 2011, Bob Britton, Micah, and Grant James were kicking off the marketing automation group, and I was one of the pioneers in that space. And my goal in life was, how do I learn this tool quickly? Because I was very interested in getting into that consulting space. And man, I don't know how many screen shares I did with Micah, learning membership sites and learning Infusionsoft, one-click upsells, all the stuff in his mastery library. So having him on board now that he is, one of the lead roles over in Memberium is kind of a trip. So Micah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, George.
And so now you're back in Utah, is my understanding, right?
Yeah, and it is a crazy blizzard. One quick story, just because I think it's funny. I've got a minivan, and I pulled up in my driveway and got out and came inside, and went and looked about 30 minutes later, and it was in the street. It had just slid right out of the driveway into the street. So that's the kind of weather we're having.
Now I'm in Miami, Florida, and if I open up the blinds there, you'll see nothing but sunshine and green. I had to put on sandals this morning so my feet didn't get too cold on the grass. So it's a little bit different here.
Right.
Oh gosh, but a car in the middle of the driveway, ouch. Cool. Well, but I mean, you were in Colorado. It's not like it's too much warmer there, I'm assuming.
No, I'm used to this. Like the whiteout, I don't care. It's good.
Good. So, interestingly enough, I mean, it's not that I'd lost touch with Micah, but we really didn't talk that often. And going back 2 years, David Bullock and I had been working some common projects together. And, David and Micah worked together at Memberium. And they were telling me about this membership site. And we started using it with one of our customers in common, but I didn't know Micah was somehow getting tied into this. So it was interesting then later to find out that, you're on the marketing end of this. David is kind of the tech guy. So it's been really cool now that, you and I are kind of more in touch, now that you're one of the guys over there at Memberium. So how's that working out?
It's great. I actually couldn't be happier. I love working with Dave. I love doing membership sites. So I'm loving life, actually.
Cool. So right now, we're in early February. There's a countdown now to Icon at the end of the month, beginning of March, and then right after that, you guys have the Memberium Summit coming up, right?
Yeah, exactly. The 2 days immediately after Icon.
Okay, so why don't you tell us? I attended the first Memberium Summit. You had that back in Chicago in September. So why don't we start talking about what you have in store for everybody? I mean, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, so the last one, it was the first one we did, and we were trying to figure out, what to include and what not to include and stuff. It was 3 days, and as you know, it was more heavily focused on marketing than building membership sites. This one is still going to have the marketing component, a little bit condensed, but is going to be really focused on how to build the site and make it very engaging. So a lot more about LearnDash, and the marketing kind of goes hand in hand with the product experience, but we're definitely going to focus there. Now, it's not a beginner event. I think only one person, there might have been more than one, came last time, and they had never been in Memberium, and so they were like, well, when are we going to learn how to do this, how to create a password or whatever else? And we just had to explain to them, look, the sales page says no newbies, and that is not a newbie event. So we hope to go much deeper, so there's a little bit of pre-study on how to get the basics of a site going. We'll kind of recap some stuff. We don't mind answering some questions, but the idea is to maximize the time we have together, so it should be more advanced membership site building, e-learning and credit systems and social aspects of a membership site and more things like that.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, we've actually got a demo site that you actually helped promote it a little bit back in October, which kind of shows you a lot of the basics. Along with the libraries that you guys have over at Memberium, but I'm hoping to go there to learn, okay, here's something I hadn't thought of, or here's something that one of the other consultants use in their customer websites. Again, how do you get more traffic? How do you get more conversions? How do you really make them so you're making either more money or becoming more popular or enhancing your reach with it, right?
Yeah, and that I think we went overboard on last time, like the marketing side, but it was good because in thinking about this event and thinking, what's going to make a site more successful or not, it's not really more bells and whistles on the membership site. Usually it is a lot more to do with the marketing and positioning, and so we took it overboard, and we're not going to pendulum too far the other way, but yeah, you're definitely right. More sharing with other people about what they're doing that works, and I hope the right amount of marketing, because Craig Jacobson, who's also speaking there, is an incredible marketer, and so even for me, after talking to him many, many times over the years, still when I talk to him, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, I agree.
Just marketing genius.
Yeah, I had Craig. I met Craig at the Memberium Summit back in Chicago, and he was, just a minefield of information. Then I made a point of having dinner with him at PartnerCon in November, and again, he gets it. He gets it in a big way, and it's just a super way to really, think outside the box. The kind of crazy stuff he's done to get his customers from here to like over the roof. So a little bit more of that I know I would appreciate it, but I guess more about the how-tos of or I guess case studies on things that are going to be making a difference.
Yeah, I think so, and that we're going from a 3-day format before to only a 2-day format, and so day one is mostly about building the site and making it as good as possible, and day two is mostly about marketing it and getting it out there as much as possible. So kind of day two will be Craig really pushing most of it, with me kind of chiming in, and day one more about kind of building and showcasing cool sites. So it'll be pretty interesting. We're going to try some new things this time to get even more group interaction. Back in Chicago, we broke out into little work groups, and a lot of people said those were some of the best parts of it. So we're going to try and do even more of that.
Well, I tell you, the people that I met at the Memberium Summit have become key in my business. I've been partnering up with 2 or 3 of them since then, and it's just been great. I also, it's interesting when you're in the partner community, you make assumptions. Oh, everybody must do what I do, but everybody's got their little niche. We just happen to be real strong in WordPress site development. We've done a ton of membership sites, but I assumed everybody was a WordPress expert, and I guess that was my mistake, because a lot of folks prefer to focus more on strategy or focus more on customer experience or whatever that might be. So there's a role for a lot of different people in this space.
Yeah, definitely. We get that too sometimes, which I always find funny. Even a couple people who were there at the event were like, well, I really don't want to build membership sites. I want to do this part, and partner with somebody, and I'm sure you're talking to some of them, but I found that pretty interesting as well, yeah.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, I was on Facebook, and you were asking for people to chime in on some of the advances or some of the features that you were planning to do. And you guys have a lot of cool stuff in store. Is that going to be available before the summit?
Yeah, actually, we're rushing to try and get most of it done by traffic and conversion, which is next week.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, we're running hard to get that done, and then we'll probably tweak and add a couple more pieces, even before Icon. So yeah, definitely by the summit, it will be kind of a whole new Memberium. A lot of the same functionality, but the way it's deployed, and I think you saw most of that. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Now, is that something? Can you share? Is that like undercover still, or?
So I can share parts of it. Yeah, one of the main things that we're doing is there's an installation wizard that will walk through the setup of a new site, and we always do what we call sane defaults, which is even if we have 100 settings, you don't have to go set all 100. You could leave them all alone, and they're going to be the same default that's going to work for most people. So the install wizard will get you through it. But the biggest thing we're doing, and I'm comfortable sharing here, it's almost out, is templates for all the different pages. So all the pages that you normally have to go build on a membership site, a registration page, a login page, and all these things are just going to be pre-built. And of course you can customize them, but you can just load all of them into your site all at once and not have to do that portion of it. And the idea behind it was to let site owners focus more on their content and their marketing instead of having to try and learn our whole technology and build all that stuff.
Right, right. And interesting. You're using the word template again, which I remember I was confused with when we spoke. But you're basically, it's like templated pages that have the right short codes configured with some default settings. So here's a login page, here's a thank you page, here's maybe a dashboard page. I mean, that's kind of the thinking that you guys are going with, right?
Yeah, and you're right. Sorry, I shouldn't say template because it's not like a
No, I
design.
mean,
It
I
is the
know exactly what you're
content.
talking about, but it's not a WordPress template, for example, which is what I was thinking as a gearhead.
Yeah, and actually because of your comment, we changed that. So I think what we call them is sample membership pages
Yeah.
is what's really going on, and we just kind of push them all into the site.
Yeah, but I tell you what, those little features, because I was just talking to someone, before this call, I was talking with someone who, is considering building a membership site, and they, they're the guy was saying he's the guy's been using Infusionsoft probably like 3 years, pretty involved in it in his business, and he was saying, dude, I saw those short codes, and it was like, oh my God, where do I even start? Which I can
Yeah.
totally understand.
Yeah, the feedback we got from a couple people is short codes to most people still sound like coding.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea behind these is like, oh, don't worry about that. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Just
Right,
just
right.
use the page.
Right. No, no, and that's a big thing because what I was sharing with them, it's kind of like, look, and I'm just picking a number. Maybe there's 30, 40 short codes total. To set up a site, maybe you have to use 10, and of those 10, you probably use two, maybe three over and over again in a lot of different places. And if you
Hmm.
kind of master those three, you're probably good. But if you don't know which three they are, you're probably going to be going, okay, where do I even start?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I feel terrible for the first-time user because they got to be totally lost nowadays. And even consultants, it's interesting because I talked with you and I talked to a bunch of others, and even some of the consultants, they would say, every time I build a site, I've got to go and look up and find these whatever 10, 15 short codes that I'm only going to use once that I don't use all the time. And yeah, even them, it's a pain. Dave and I made the joke that it's like we're giving somebody a puzzle and it's just like a box of puzzle pieces and like we give that to people. It's
Yeah.
terrible. So looking at the new thing, I can say that in the past it's like, how did people build a site?
Yeah.
Like really, how did they figure that out? Despite us trying, we weren't trying to make it confusing, but in
Yeah.
hindsight, it's like, yeah, that wasn't the greatest.
Yeah, no, and I mean, literally, what we do is we take basically our one base site and we throw it into a WordPress, installation, and then we cut out the stuff we don't need, do the styling, and then at that point, it's kind of automagic, I guess. But it's only after you've built a few of these, and this is the way we like to build them, that you have something that's relatively canned, and then you show up with basically the equivalent of your sample pages. Which, by the way, I mean, I thought that was a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, we're a little slow too, because people were telling us since last icon, like, where are the built-in pages? And so that's part of what we're doing for the new version. What we did, do you know Chris Lemma, George?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who Chris Lemma is?
Yes, I mean, not personally, I know who he is.
Yeah, like a WordPress kind of blogger guy. And I didn't know who he was a couple months ago either, but he did a review of the 30 best membership plugins for WordPress. And when we went through and looked at those, it was really interesting to see how other people do it because we live underneath Infusionsoft and kind of do it an Infusionsoft down way. But looking at the broader, membership site community for WordPress, we're borrowing a lot from those as well. So we kind of looked at the ones that were more highly rated than we were. They don't integrate to Infusion; they're more general, and try to borrow some concepts for them. And that was one of the main concepts is they had what they call membership pages. They had some sample email templates that they sent out. They put people through wizards. They had set up checklists. And so we're kind of smashing that all into, Memberium for the Infusionsoft user.
Now that I think about it, I had a customer who used him as a consultant. And
Hmm.
it was, I mean, we didn't have a lot of interaction, but it was interesting to hear an outsider's view on these membership systems. That again, I used iMember 360 first, and then Memberium. So my thinking is kind of biased in that direction. But when you compare it to the wish lists and the S2s and all the other folks, it's a different perspective. And moving more in some of those directions, I think is good for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. And it was the same for us. Like we only had this limited, infusion-esque perspective. And Chris, with that broader perspective, is interesting looking at how he reviewed those sites, some of the criteria he used that we as Infusionsoft users don't even really think that much about because it
Right.
comes from Infusion, like, integration of payment gateways. One of the interesting things that we still haven't done as well, but that he put a lot of weight on was upgrading and downgrading, the ability to prorate as people upgrade and downgrade between levels,
Yeah.
which we're kind of looking at and working on. But I thought that was an interesting one that's like, oh yeah, no, we don't think about that, that
No,
often
no,
anyways.
right. And it's kind of like when I upgrade in us, a lot of our approach is, okay, the upgrade is going to happen, or the payment upgrade is going to happen when the next 30-day increment happens. But I give them
Mhm.
access. But I mean, trying to prorate and how long, and do I give them? I mean, that's kind of a hairy problem that I try to get customers not to get too caught up in it because there's no easy way around it today.
Yeah, our answer today is, set up a task and have a staff member do it if you're going to prorate.
There you go.
Um,
There you go.
yeah.
Um, cool. So let me ask you. One of the things that I'm noticing, since we work with your support guys a lot, not because it's broken, but because it's like, how should I be doing something like this? I
Mhm.
noticed that David and you are not the ones answering all the calls. So you've got a couple of other guys, and let me tell you, they're right on. They're right on. I mean, a couple times they say, "Hey, I have to check with David on that," but they check with David quick and get back. I've been pretty impressed with the customer support, and I'm not just kind of saying this because you're on.
No, it's something we work hard at, and we're a little bit anal retentive on, honestly. And when we first got started, I mean, you're saying that I think because when you first got started, it was Dave every time. You'd ask a question, it's Dave right there, right? And so it's taken quite a bit of time to get the first couple of guys up. One of them was mentioning to me this morning they're about at their 1.5 year mark. And during
Oh, so
that whole
that's how long
time,
you've had support guys on board.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and we for the type of support that they're doing, normally, it's just like, oh, I'll throw somebody there and have them kind of be the front line of defense. But our guys, we actually didn't let them, they didn't answer any tickets for at least 90 days, meaning we put them through kind of an orientation, kind of boot camp thing, training them on the software. And they were making internal notes where we coached them on their responses. Internal meaning not to the client, but here's what I would say to the client if I could. And we coached them on it for a long time before actually having them respond to clients. And then there's a period after that where they're responding to clients, but we're copied. And so if anything happens, we chime in and say, you could have worded this a little more simply, you could have addressed this issue and that issue, because it's a really pretty complex thing. When somebody asks a question about support for their membership site, it's typically not just about our software, it's about Infusion and our software and a little bit of business strategy mixed in, kind of like, yeah, what's the best way to do X if Y and Z are also happening, and so it definitely takes a while to get them up to speed. And then we hired a new batch this fall, and a couple of them are starting to respond, and a couple of them are still behind the scenes a bit and will be responding in the future once they're up to speed. But we definitely took a whole different route on our customer support. In fact, even the hiring process took more than a month. Collected about 100 resumes each time, or job applicants, better
Sure.
way to put it, and then put them through several layers of screening to finally get the right people. So support is something that we take the most seriously.
Well,
It's kind of our main thing.
well, then keep in mind that the kind of questions that I tend to ask are not the easy ones, and I've been pleasantly surprised. And pretty quick too,
Good.
by the way, because I'm usually working some nuts hours, and it's not like I'm sitting around waiting for long periods of time, and the responses come, they're sharp ones. So, I mean, that's something that for me is important because I've got customer deadlines that are usually on the other side of my question.
Well, that's good to hear, because yeah, I know you know all the answers to the basic stuff. So, but yeah, for support, we take it really seriously, and then response time is a big deal, and it's hard and it is
Yeah,
expensive
yeah.
and takes a ton of time and energy. But we actually, Dave and I both enjoy doing support when we get the chance. But it is awesome too to see our guys doing well, and it's a good feeling.
And let me ask you, so how big's your team now?
There's 4 full-time support, and then 5 others, myself, Dave, accountant, partner manager, and marketing guy, Andrew.
Wow. Okay, so you guys are bigger than I thought you were already. By the way, I think that also came up in Chris Lemma's one of his old. I don't know if it was the most recent one, but one of his reviews. It's like, hey, do you really want to trust your business to a startup? And I mean, I guess for those of us that are in the Infusionsoft space, I guess we're used to it. But if I was a bigger company and I was comparing it to other businesses, that's something to consider.
Yeah, I remember him talking about that. Like a couple of the companies on there were real shallow, and it is a little bit scary, especially when if you're aware of it, that you have the choice of other companies who are bigger and more
Yeah, yeah.
established. And but yeah, I'm the same way. It's like, oh, does this plugin do what I want? I'll take it. And most of the time I'm good, but occasionally it's like, oh, I didn't realize there was no support or versions aren't coming out
Sure.
fast and furious. And so yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well, any final words? We're kind of at the end of our time.
Um,
You're always a man of
I
few words
don't
here.
know. Yeah. About the membership summit, it's going to be quite a bit of fun. It's immediately after ICON. That should be cool. And then, if anybody has any questions, they can get a hold of us at memberium.com, and we'll respond pretty quickly to those.
Right, right. And the summit is the weekend after ICON, so that's March. I think it's 9 and 10.
5th and 6th. So ICON is 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, I believe,
Right,
and
the
then we're
Friday.
5th and
So you
6th.
guys are Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
And it's right across the street from where ICON is. So
Right, right. I saw
people
that.
are probably just going to extend.
Great. Great. Well, hey, Micah, thank you for joining us, and we'll get this out to people in a couple weeks so they get it before both ICON and Memberium, and people can learn more about this stuff. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, George.
You got it. Take care.